a whole bunch of people, because I read that Chris Perkins article in the last segment, whole bunch of people, I kind of honed in on that sentence that I love, that, Mike McDaniel's been given more quality roster personnel than just about any Dolphins coach. And so many people are taking issue with that. That's the preponderance of the comments on the text line is just, no, what are you talking about that they have a good roster? That they don't. I take issue with that because I think they have a very good roster. I really do.
Who had a better roster? All-pro receiver, 2 Pro Bowl style receivers. Jalen hasn't made one yet. You had Pro Bowl safety. You have one of the best corners, Hall of Fame corner. You always had a defensive line, even though like the Jalen Chubb injuries, I think really hurt this team because they couldn't get pressure on the quarterback.
But roster-wise, Mike McDaniel has been given quality pieces. You have to include Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb in that, right? You have to include Tua. I think best quarterback since Dan Marino.
Huck, that's the thing. Tua, and it's always when healthy. Sure. Tua is a top 10 quarterback. I heard them talking about it. They were talking about the Tyreek thing, and all the ESPN people were saying, like, Tua's a top 10 quarterback when he's playing, and we always have to put that little clause on Tua. But no, what team is better? Did Adam Gase have any better teams? Do they want to invoke like the 08? Go back to, that's my reference point because I went to the playoffs that year. But like the Ronnie Ricky Wildcat, Chad Pennington year, I don't think we were as talented as this team. To be honest, I'll be, that's kind of throwing myself under the bus. But this team has players on it.
Again, I'm just doing names on the roster. I'm not telling you that they may have had bad seasons, underperforming seasons, because Javon Holland had an underperforming season. Mm-hmm. Tyreek Hill had an underperforming season. But on paper, I put Javon Holland at safety. I put drawing a blank on the cornerback.
Jalen Ramsey.
Yeah. I put Ramsey. I put Teron Armstead on the line. I put Raheem Mostert. Again, I'm not telling you that they didn't
led the NFL in rushing touchdowns 2 years ago.
A season before. I'm not saying that last season was like, I'm not doing, hey, look at the roster after last season. I'm saying if you look at the roster that Mike McDaniel was given on paper with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and Tua, I feel like he had a pretty quality roster. I do.
And the speaking of defense, I just made up. We brought up Javon. I know Javon did the kick rocks, whatever Instagram post. Javon Holland was a Pro Bowl safety in Vic Fangio's system.
Yeah,
but Vic Fangio didn't want to be here, and I don't know if it's his ties to Philly. We know his mom's there. We heard the stories, but head coach's responsibility, or you put that on Chris Greer that we have to go rehire a defensive coordinator. Then the defensive coordinator we had leaves and has one of the best defenses I've seen in a long time in Philadelphia after that. And our defense was very good with him calling the plays as well. And he never blitzed in the Super Bowl, which is crazy. And it confused Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, which are the best quarterback play caller duo that we've seen in a long time. Like, there's a lot of nuance to McDaniel's success, or you want to call it failure, but you said 28 and 25. He's above 500. I don't think that's good enough for fans.
But this is a conversation the three of us had before going into last season. The roster is top heavy. The roster has star talent attached to it, no doubt. But man, if you really want to go down the list, you guys know I felt like there were massive holes on this team, starting with the offensive line. And continuing into the defensive line, you were banking on Bradley Chubb, who you traded for, already had injury history, and you paid him a lot of money. Jalen Phillips coming into this year, I mean, the dude proved to be Iron Man to get back out onto the field, but I think there's legitimate concerns about his health moving forward, even if he comes back healthy from this next injury. Tua, the most important part to your roster, I mean, you have to have a caveat to the most important part of your roster with when he's available. Jalen Waddle.
Who doesn't? Like when I hear people do this, it's like, who doesn't have an injury history in the NFL? I'm being honest. Like
Hoch, you're starting left tackle. The most important part of your offense is going to miss 4 games guaranteed, and then your starting left tackle is who you paid handsomely as well, is going to miss 3 to 4 games guaranteed. I mean that's not sustainable. It's just not.
Hoch, but let me see, Hoch. But no. I want to answer Hoch's question because so the pushback. Name another top 10 quarterback that has the caveat because Tua has that when he's healthy. I want to say Joe Burrow. I'll give you Joe Burrow because Joe's been hurt a bunch. But the playoff quarterbacks, we're not worried about Jaden Daniels. We're not worried about Jalen Hurts. We're not worried about Josh Allen.
One season with
we're not. What about Josh Allen in our division? We're not worried about Josh Allen being hurt. We're worried about Tua being hurt.
Yeah, but I do think quarterbacks miss games. Like, I mean, that's why we were all so outraged that when they went to the backup quarterback, it looked so bad because we've seen backups before. I mean, I don't know. I think it's convenient sometimes.
No, I was gonna say, tell what you said. It's a very important thing this offseason that Chris Grier addresses the backup quarterback. Because you keep bringing up Jameis and just spend the money because
thing. Yep.
I agree with you 100% on that. But other teams are not worried about their backup quarterback as much as we are. The top teams.
Right. No, I understand. Like we because of Tua's injury history, we have to be much more cognizant of a backup quarterback, which was a huge flaw in the plan for last season. But I just don't think when we go, oh, this guy's injured and you're only going to get 13 games out of this guy, whatever. Like, I think that's pretty widespread across the league. I really do.
Maybe for a season, but not every season moving forward. And Crowder, I disagree. I understand prioritize the backup quarterback. That's fine. You need to because of Tua's injury concerns. But to me, if you have a quarterback who needs to be upright, who needs to be protected, then you have to prioritize the offensive line, which the Dolphins did not. A massive detriment to Chris Grier and Mike McDaniel, thinking that the guys they put out there were good enough to protect your quarterback who cannot be touched. If you guys don't think that the Dolphins need to invest massive amount of resources into their offensive line, they should have already been doing that over the past couple years, then I don't know. Like, we're watching different teams in the Super Bowl and in the conference championship games. Those teams all protect their quarterbacks and have solid running games. The Dolphins don't have any of that.
Well, again, I'm not telling you they have an all-pro offensive line. I mean, like, don't conflate what I'm saying with, oh, when I look at them, it looks like the Eagles' offensive line to me. I'm not saying that by any stretch. It all goes back to the overarching conversation that we had at the end of the season. I believe this roster, as constructed, is much closer to success than you do. Period. End of story. Like, I think they were beset by injuries this past season in an abnormal fashion, but it does happen to football teams. I think they were beset by injuries. And if they hadn't been, specifically the 4.5 games that Tua missed, it's a different season. That's how close I think they are.
So if they're that talented, Hoch, let me reset it. If you give this roster to Nick Sirianni, if you give this roster to Andy Reid, you give this roster to, Dan Quinn, do they make the playoffs and do they go further? Because if you can say yes, that's the McDaniel problem.
Oh, no doubt, but I don't think so. I think Mike McDaniel is perfectly suited to coach Tua Tagovailoa. Perfectly suited.
So what about Andy Reid? I think what can Andy Reid do with Tua Tagovailoa?
Are you asking me if I would trade Mike McDaniel for Andy Reid? Yes, every time, 100 out of a million times. Like, I mean, that's not a fair question. I would trade Patrick Mahomes for Tua as much as I like Tua. So, like, you've got to make it. Again, it's the who's available. Is there an unbelievably significant upgrade available? And I think that when the team is humming, they're a pretty damn good football team. And I don't think you really got to see it last season at all. Tyreek had an offseason. Maybe it was due to the injury. Tua missed 4.5 games right at the beginning of the season. Like, it just never hummed last season. And I look at the season prior to that and say, I think that team is closer to who the Dolphins are than last season's team.
But even the season before, I mean, I hate to pull
I know,
out this card.
I know.
Because you know what card I'm going with, but
I know.
Man, they can't beat good teams.
I know.
Like that's my barometer. My barometer is.
But again, I think you get better every season. But I'm taking last season out of the equation. I'm just taking it out. So what I see this next coming season to me is year 3, and I expect to see improvement against the better teams and have a playoff win. Yeah.
Tua missed what? He played in 2 and missed 4. So there was 10 games with Tua. They weren't impressive through those 10 games.
Right, but you were missing key pieces. It wasn't just Tua. They were missing key pieces, and Tyreek was not himself. Like, that's the reality of it.
And you have those guys utilized. And back to something you said, Solana, where, like, you haven't protected them. And, I'm like, I say everything jokingly, but I want guys with eating disorders. I want big fat dudes. We need to beef up our trenches. Robert Hunt was good. He just got $100 million deal and made a Pro Bowl. We're still playing Liam Eichenberg. Connor Williams was here and left. Teron Armstead can't play but 10, 12 games a year. Austin Jackson you get a first-round pick offensive lineman, and he's a swing guy, go left, right, guard, tackle. They've tried. Isaiah Wynn. They have tried to solidify the O-line, and this is on Chris Grier, I would say, personally. They keep missing when they try to bring these guys in. What? Kendall Lamb. And we're playing guys that really no other team would start, but we have to start them. So is that on Grier? Because I got to say offensive line's on Grier. I don't think McDaniel's evaluating O-lineman and saying, yeah, that's the left guard I want. But, like, whose responsibility is it to protect him? Because, to your point, our O-line is not very good. Our O-line is probably one of the worst in the league. But who needs to find those pieces? Hopefully this draft they find those pieces. Hopefully trading. I don't know what they do to find those pieces. But to have a quarterback that gets injured and us bring in offensive lineman after offensive lineman that doesn't work out, that's troubling as well.